Hey, welcome back to the Too Fast channel. In this video, we're going to be discussing cold air intake, specifically for my Volkswagen EOS VR6, and what I chose to do to my intake system. I was hoping this would be a fairly easy video, show you how to make a modification to the existing air intake system and be done with it, but it turned out to be much more complicated, and I've kind of put everything back together so we can kind of pseudo start from the beginning, so to speak, even though I've pretty much done a whole lot of stuff up to this point. So a cold air intake. A cold air intake, it's funny, you see a lot of people, I see a lot of people that they say, yeah, I'm going to install a cold air intake, and they install a big old cone filter sitting right here, and it's like, well, that's not really a cold air intake, that's a hot air intake. It's sucking in hot air from the engine bay. A cold air intake is something that's going to be hermetically sealed. It's a contained ecosystem, so to speak. And it only draws in air from the outside, or cold air. It doesn't draw in any type of engine or any type of heated air coming from the engine. Now, the cone filters that kind of replace this and sit right here, they may have a heat shroud on them, but these heat shrouds have gaps in them. They don't butt up to the hood of the car 100%. So you may think it's a sealed ecosystem, but it's not. It's sucking in a bunch of hot air. So my personal opinion is stay away from any of those types of intake systems. If you're looking to get any type of performance, stay away from those. Now, there are some closed cold air intake systems out there. AFE makes one. Well, they make it specifically for the Volkswagen R32. It should be applicable to my car because I have the same motor and the same airbox, but they don't list the EOS as a application for it. And what it basically does is it replaces the top section of the airbox here, and it has a cone filter inside of it. So you end up with a cold air intake utilizing this part of the intake system and the intake and the grill, and you replace the top section of the box. And it has a cone filter in it. Now, that's a really nice setup from what I can see. Now, I haven't used it, but it's a really nice setup. Problem is it's $400. So $400 for maybe 7 to 10 horsepower, not really worth it in my opinion. Now, another option is Forge has got a sealed ecosystem or ecosystem. It's basically a sealed canister with a cone filter in it, and it kind of sits right here and connects up to your throttle body, and it connects to this existing air intake, and it kind of sits right in this area. A few people who own R32s have mentioned that the canister that filter sits in is too large and it hits the top of the hood. I can't verify that, but that's what some R32 owners have said. But those are the only two sealed systems I would consider a cold air intake. And mind you, on the VR6 motor, I can't speak for the Turbo 4s, but on the VR6, that might net 7 to 10 horsepower, and that's maybe to the rear wheels. So what I'm doing is I'm going to put in a K&N Panel Filter. Now, the K&N Panel Filter will probably net 3 to 5 horsepower to the rear wheels. Not as much as, say, the AFE or the Forge, but again, it's not $400 either. So something to keep in mind. I picked up a K&N. Of course, it's the model 33-2384. So this is kind of a quasi unboxing as well. The air filter ships with a couple of K&N stickers, a warranty card, installing the air filter, which I'm not going to go over. This is basically the box that the panel filter comes in, and this runs about 55, 60 bucks, depends on where you get it. I got it off of Amazon. I think it was 60 or 65. So I've used K&N air filters for 20 some odd years. I've never had an issue with the K&Ns. I've never had a mass airflow sensor issue with oil collecting on the center wires, damaging the mass airflow sensor. It's never happened. And I've used K&Ns on a lot of different cars. So I don't know if that's a myth, but I'd have to say that if that does happen out in the world, it's probably due to user error. Oiling the wrong side of the filter, over-oiling the filter. Those would be my guesses. If you properly clean a K&N filter and properly oil it on the correct side, you're not going to have those types of issues. And I will normally clean my K&N filter probably every 10,000-15,000 miles, or at least take it out and check it, see if it needs to be cleaned. If it does, I clean it. And at the same time, I will check the mass airflow sensor for any type of oil residue, and I've never ever had any oil residue anywhere near my mass airflow sensor. So that's with 20 years worth of usage out of K&N filters. So the K&N panel filter, you can see right here, the oil goes on the bottom, not on the top. This is going to sit like this. The air is going to come up from the bottom, come through the top, through this accordion style air intake right under the throttle body. So we're going to get to this in just a moment. Now, I've already had this all taken apart. I've kind of put it back together again. So to do this on a VR6, I can't comment on an inline 4. So this is a VR6. So do this on a VR6. We've got to remove this clamp right here. Some pliers like this, squeezing here, moving this clamp back so you can get this hose off the mass airflow sensor. There's a plug right here. It needs to be unplugged. And then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think 8 Phillips screws. You can unscrew them. They're captured screws, so you're not going to lose those. And then the top will basically come right off. So, and this is what the underside of the airbox looks like with the mass airflow sensor. And since I've already had this off, I've already checked the mass airflow sensor. No issues with this whatsoever. Didn't expect there to be. And then the stock air filter. You can see here, this air filter's been on here for a while. It's got a foam layer on the bottom, then it's a paper filter, so it's more or less due, at least for a cleaning or a replacement. All right, so moving on. You can see on the inside of the airbox right here, we have this assembly right here. So how this basically works, its air intake system, is through the vents in the grill and on the top of the grill, cold air will be sucked in, and it comes in through here and it goes down and comes out the bottom of this airbox. The air then comes up through the filter over in this direction and then into the throttle body. Now this airbox, the reason this has taken me so long is this airbox kind of threw a curveball, because I took it apart and this has got a valve assembly in it. Now I've thrown this back in here because the valve kind of sits right here, but I've already taken this all apart and I've already removed this. I'm not exactly sure how this valve works. I did a bit of research on this, and it seems that this is either has to do with emissions, to where this valve is open and it lets air from the engine bay into the throttle body for faster warm-up maybe, or it's a auxiliary air intake in case the primary gets plugged. I don't know. I read a few posts on different Volkswagen forums. and there was a bunch of conjecture about what the purpose of this was and how it functioned. And, you know, nobody stepped forward and said, oh, well, you know, I'm a Volkswagen engineer, and this is the design philosophy behind this, and this is how it works, and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. So I can say that the R32s in Europe don't have this in the airbox. So, you know, and that seems to be a common modification for R32s, is to put the European airbox on it. I don't know much about the European airbox, but from people that have done it, they basically said this flapper's not in the European airbox. So I don't know how this works. There's this is not an electronic, it's not vacuum operated, it's not electronic. There's this piece that faces the airflow. If you look at the bottom, there's a plunger and a spring system. It almost looks to me like if this were to heat up, it would push on the spring system and close this flapper. I took this out, put it on my workbench. I took a heat gun to this. I heated this up to where I couldn't touch it. It was that hot. Nothing moved. I don't know how it functions. It could just be broken on mine. I don't know. So don't beat me up in the comments about this, because I did experiment with this, play around with it, and you know, when I came out and took this apart, the car had been sitting for a couple days, so it was cold, and this was open. So I don't know. Whatever it is, if the European cars don't have it, I don't need it. It basically, since it sat right there, it really restricts the airflow. So to remove this, 1, 2, 3 Phillips screws, and you can slide this out. Now what you end up with, let's see if you can see it. Yeah, you can see up over in here, we've got some silver tape right here. Well, it's not tape, it's actually high temp dryer duct. It's aluminum high temp dryer duct tape that's designed to seal dryer ducts. So there's a hole right here, and there's a flange on the back, which I sealed up. The flange on the back actually had this little intake on it that went down into the engine bay. So I removed this and wrapped the flange with the high temp dryer duct tape, and I also put a couple layers here as well. So to seal that up, so I want a sealed ecosystem here. I don't want any type of hot air coming into the airbox. So this is basically going to increase the airflow into the box. There'll be more air in the box to pass through the filter into the throttle body. Now the other thing I did, because I had to take the airbox out to do that. So if you were to want to do this yourself, there's an Allen bolt right here. You got to remove that, and then the airbox will pop out. You've got to remove this assembly first, right here. This lid will just pop off. Let's see, where are we at? There's a screw back here and a screw on the other side, and I believe they're either T20s, Torxes. Very tough to get something in here. You gotta have a real short tool for that. Something like this with a T20 bit will work. Even this is a little bit too big. A small ratcheting type of screwdriver with a bit would probably be better. I don't have one of those handy, so I use this. Remove these two screws. This will come out, and then you can, after you take out that bolt right there, the airbox will lift out. It is on, there's a peg right here, and there's a peg right there. You just have to pull the box straight up, and it will pop off, and there's rubber grommets, the pegs, rubber grommets that go over the pegs. So not too overly complicated with the removal of the airbox. Now this here, let's see if we can see it. Let's tilt that just a little bit. You can see I've got some more of this high temp dryer duct aluminum insulating material right here. There was a plastic flange right here that limited the amount of air coming in through the grill in and then going down into the airbox. So there was a big flange. I don't think I already cut it out. Obviously I did that, so I can't really show that, but there was a flange there and I used a Dremel to cut this out. Also, this area right here where my fingers are, this actually went directly into the engine bay. So you've got all this cold air coming in to this air intake system, and only a small portion of it's going into the airbox. The rest of it's being diverted and going into the engine bay. I'm all for having lots of cold air going into the engine bay to cool the engine, but not at the sacrifice of engine performance. So after cutting that flange out, I sealed up that back opening with this aluminum high temp dryer duct tape, and I put it on the back side and I put it on the inside. So I actually have two layers. I didn't want to just put it on the back and then have the adhesive on the inside to collect dirt and bugs. That would be nasty. So I put another layer on the inside, so there's no adhesive to catch anything. Plus, it makes this stronger. Now, ideally, you know, if you were so equipped, you had a plastic welder, you could weld in a piece of plastic on the back. You know, same with over here. You could weld in a piece of plastic if you had something like that, or any other type of material. This is what I had. I've used this before, and so I'm using it again. So what this will do is basically allow more air into the airbox instead of half of it getting diverted and going into the engine bay. And then we remove this valve so we have a larger volume inside of the airbox, and we're not sucking in hot air from the engine compartment. So those are the mods I've done to this air intake system at this point. So if you had something similar on your EOS or your R32, you could do something similar to this. Got the K&N filter out. Now the K&N filters come pre-oiled. They do not ship with oil or cleaning, any cleaning materials. You have to buy the cleaning kit separate. There's an aerosol can that has oil in it and a bottle of cleaner. You squirt it on the filter. You run it underneath a hose, wash it out. You follow the instructions, of course, and then re-oil the filter. And the back side of the filter is what gets oiled. And you do a light coating of oil on this when you re-oil it. And you don't put it on the top side. And then the filter will basically just drop into place like so. And then you can put the top back on, screw it down, reconnect this intake hose coming from your mass airflow sensor back onto the airbox, and you're done. So K&N's, one other thing I wanted to mention about the K&N is, you know, the K&N panel filters, if you do some research, you can find out the airflow through these different panel filters. So there are numerous different companies that have tested filters, and private individuals have tested filters, and so on. The K&N, roughly, from my research, it should flow about 513 CFM, whereas like the AFE panel filter, the AFE 5R panel filter flows 508. Now that's the AFE filter that uses oil. So they're very close in their flow numbers. Now the panel filters like the Piper Cross and AFE has another panel filter that does not use oil. It's a dry filter. And Piper Cross has a dry filter as well. Now the problem with that is it sounds like a great idea. Wow, you know, a performance air filter that doesn't need oil, I won't ruin my mass airflow sensor. The problem with that is those filters don't flow anywhere near the amount of air that an oil-based filter does. So, yeah, it's something to keep in mind when we're talking maybe a 3 to 5 horsepower increase with K&N, and you drop down to a panel filter that doesn't require any oil. Yeah, you're not going to get the same performance level. So it's, you know, it's better than a paper filter, but yeah, if you're just going with a panel filter and some mods like I've done, you want it to flow as much air as possible. So that's the information I came up with from K&N. Now the back of this particular box right here, the back of this particular box has some airflow features. 2042. There's all right, sorry about that. I exceeded the recording limit of my my camera here. On the back of this box, there's some airflow numbers here. These airflow numbers are for model number 33-2042. That's not this filter, but that particular filter has a 441 CFM airflow. So you know, you can find this type of information on K&N's website if you do some searching for it. But this particular number right here, when I first looked at this, I was like, oh, this is odd, because those numbers don't jive with the numbers I saw for this filter, and that's because this is a sample airflow. This is not for the air filter that's in this box, so that's a little bit misleading. So that's basically going to wrap up this air intake modification on the Volkswagen EOS VR6 and the K&N panel filter installation. I'm going to put this all back together off camera. I don't need to waste your time with that because that's pretty simple stuff. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you found some of this information useful for your modifications on your car.